The emergency klaxons of the Galactic Council's orbital station had not sounded in 400 years. They were sounding now. High Chancellor Zareth pressed 6 of his 8 fingers against the cold obsidian surface of the command dais and stared at the sensor feed with all 3 of his eyes wide open, something his species did only in moments of profound disbelief. Around him, the representatives of 47 civilizations were doing something he had never witnessed in his 160 years of diplomatic service. They were running. Chancellor. Ambassador Voreth of the Pell Collective stumbled toward him, her bioluminescent frills flattened in terror. The readings cannot be correct. Tell me the readings are not correct. Zareth said nothing. Because the readings were, without question, correct. It had dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly inside the Council's secured perimeter, a violation so audacious that the defense grid had simply frozen, its targeting algorithms apparently unable to process the act as intentional. No civilization announced itself that way. No civilization could announce itself that way. To drop from FTL inside a gravity well, inside a secured exclusion zone, inside sensor range of 47 armed escort vessels? It was either a catastrophic navigation accident or a declaration. The object on the screen was not an accident. It was a ship. Or rather, and Zareth struggled to find language adequate to the task, it was a statement that had been given engines. The Galactic Council's largest warship, the Sovereign Arbiter, stretched 900 meters from bow to stern. It had taken the combined shipyards of 6 civilizations 11 years to construct. It was the pride of the known galaxy, the iron promise of collective security, the physical manifestation of peace enforced. The human vessel was 11 kilometers long. The USCS Inexorable Will, murmured Lieutenant Prey, Zareth's Keth aide, reading from the transponder data with the soft monotone of someone who had dissociated from reality entirely. Admiral Darian Voss, commanding. Titan-class battle carrier. Registered to the United Systems Colonial Navy. A pause. They are hailing us, Chancellor. Of course they are, Zareth said quietly. He straightened. He was High Chancellor of the Galactic Council. He had negotiated peace between the Hive Collective and the Crystal Dominion. He had personally talked the Gortati back from the edge of extinction-level warfare. He was not going to let a very large ship make him forget who he was. Put it through, he said. The holographic display bloomed to life, and Admiral Darian Voss looked out at the council chamber. She was human, which Zareth knew only in the abstract, having never met one in person. The intelligence files described them as a medium-sized bipedal species, mammalian, unremarkable in physical stature, with a lifespan of barely a century. The files described them as a developing civilization of moderate military potential, unlikely to achieve Tier 2 classification for another 300 to 400 years. The intelligence files, Zareth noted, were going to need significant revision. Voss was perhaps 50 of her planet's years old, dark-skinned, close-cropped silver hair, wearing a uniform so dark it seemed to swallow light. Behind her, Zareth could glimpse the bridge of the Inexorable Will, a cathedral of steel and screens and the quiet, precise movement of human crew. She regarded him with brown eyes that contained the particular quality Zareth had only ever seen in beings who had fought too many battles and survived them all. High Chancellor Zareth. Her voice was calm. Translator smooth, but the cadence underneath was unhurried. I'm Admiral Darian Voss. I apologize for the unannounced approach. We've been out of contact for 8 months and I wanted to be certain we could reach you before announcing ourselves to anyone else. 8 months. The phrase settled into the chamber like a stone into still water. Admiral Voss. Zareth kept his voice perfectly level. Your vessel's specifications appear to exceed anything currently registered with the Council. I wonder if you might help us understand what we're looking at. Voss tilted her head slightly. Something crossed her face, not quite amusement, but adjacent to it. The Inexorable Will is a Titan-class battle carrier. We've been building the class in secret for about 12 years, in the Kepler exclusion zones. 4 hulls complete. 6 more in final assembly. She paused. We became aware, approximately 14 months ago, of the Dreth Supremacy's construction program. The Varathian dreadnoughts. Another pause, waited this time. We also became aware that the Council's intelligence apparatus had failed to detect it. Dead silence. The Dreth Supremacy. Zareth felt something cold move through him. The Dreth were old. Old and patient, and they had been quiet for 60 years, which everyone had agreed was a good sign, and which now, standing in the light of this revelation, felt like the stupidest thing the Council had ever collectively decided. You knew, said Ambassador Vareth, stepping forward, her frills rising in alarm. You knew about the Dreth program? We suspected for 2 years. We confirmed 14 months ago. Voss's expression didn't change. We chose not to bring it to the Council because, frankly, we weren't certain the Dreth didn't have assets within the Council. We still aren't certain. The chamber erupted. 47 species, bellowing in 47 frequencies of outrage and panic, a wall of sound that Zareth had to physically raise his secondary arms to quiet. And your solution, he said, when the noise had subsided enough to permit speech, was to build this? This, Voss said, and the rest of the fleet. Yes. Admiral, a vessel of this size, this armament, the Council's charter explicitly. The Council's charter, Voss said, and there was something in her voice now, something underneath the calm, like bedrock beneath still water, was written when the most dangerous thing in this galaxy was a border dispute over mining rights. We are not in that galaxy anymore. She leaned forward slightly. High Chancellor. I've spent the last 8 months at the edge of Dreth space. I've watched their construction platforms. I've counted their hulls. I've listened to their communications. A beat. I'm not here to threaten the Council. I'm here because in approximately 11 months, the Dreth Supremacy is going to move, and when they do, the Sovereign Arbiter and every ship like it is going to shatter like glass. The silence this time was different. It wasn't the silence of outrage. It was the silence of beings trying to remember how to breathe. Zareth looked at the image of the inexorable will still displayed on the secondary screen beside Voss's face. 11 kilometers of human engineering, bristling with weapons he couldn't name, escorted by, he counted, 16 smaller vessels that were each individually larger than the Council's top-tier warships. And you propose, he said carefully, to do what, exactly? Voss straightened. I propose, she said, to ask the Council for formal recognition of the United Systems Colonial Navy's Titan fleet as a sanctioned defense force under modified charter protocols. I propose to share everything we know about Dreth movements and capabilities. I propose to establish a joint intelligence framework that actually works. A pause. And then I propose to go back to the border and make certain that when the Dreth come, and they will come, they meet something that doesn't break. Zareth studied her for a long moment. She was, by any biological measure, unremarkable. One of a species that had been spacefaring for barely 3 centuries. One of a species that the Council had categorized as developing and moderate potential and unlikely to achieve Tier 2 classification for another 300 to 400 years. One of a species, he was beginning to understand, that had looked at the darkness between the stars, decided it was insufficient, and quietly spent a decade building something the darkness would have to reckon with. Lieutenant Prey, Zareth said. Chancellor? Please prepare the formal reception chamber. He held Voss's gaze. And contact the chiefs of staff of every member fleet. Emergency convening. Full quorum. He heard the stunned silence of his aide. All 47? All 47. Zareth looked at the human admiral on his screen, at the impossible ship behind her, at the 11 months of borrowed time she had just handed them. I believe we have a great deal to discuss. For the first time, something shifted in Voss's expression. Not relief, exactly. Not triumph. Something quieter and harder to name, the look of someone who had carried a weight for a very long time and had finally been permitted to set it down somewhere solid. "Thank you, Chancellor." "Don't thank me yet, Admiral." Zareth let a thin note of dry humor enter his voice. He had learned it from a human ambassador once, and found it surprisingly useful. "You've just told 47 civilizations that they've been sleeping through an extinction-level threat. They are going to have questions." Voss almost smiled. "I've got 8 months of answers," she said. "Let's get to work." Outside, 11 kilometers of human resolve held its position in the orbital dark, patient and still, and did not blink.